As some of you may know, or maybe not, this Tuesday, I start pastor school. So I was working on this sermon long before the first class that is happening on Tuesday, and we got homework. And part of that homework was to look at how a sermon is structured. Now, people who know me well know that I don't read directions, and I kind of feel and intuit my way through things. So I am told that in preparing a sermon, it is really kind of nice to tell a story, something personal, and preferably something funny. So I'm going to tell you, and hopefully I will be able to relate it into my whole message, is anybody who knows me really knows me well knows that I am fairly clumsy. If I'm not totally paying attention to what I'm doing, you will frequently find me in a heap on the floor. So I thought I would tell this, and my husband will say, well, the problem is you're not seeing three-dimensionally. You're going full steam ahead in a two-dimensional perception. So about 20 years ago, my husband and I were starting and running the Concordia Youth Chorale. And your church, our church now, my church, opened its doors wide. Let me close the piano so I don't bang it. I'm very kinesthetic. Opened its doors wide and said, you can come rehearse here. Well, I was rehearsing with our youngsters, and the youngest in this group went from age 7, and up to about 4th grade before we started to merge them into an intermediate group. So what I had done, picture our church, and on the floor in front of the pews that would be to my left, so we'd say the right side. And I decided to try to encourage these children to sing louder, that I would go all the way up to the back of the church. So I step up into the altar area and I go up 3 steps to the top step of the church, and I'm getting them to sing louder, and it was working, and I'm really excited. So I get myself back down to the altar level and I am talking at them a million miles a minute. Well, imagine that, step off onto the floor. I don't see it. The next thing I know, I am flat on my back with my legs flipping up over my head. So here are my legs up in the air. I come back down, I spring back up. Now I was 20 years younger. And the kids, their eyes are on stalks and they're waiting to make sure Mrs. Balme is okay. And Mrs. Balme goes, well, I bet you never saw a teacher do that before. In which case, the whole rest of the rehearsal was a complete loss because we were all laughing so hard. So that is my funny story. Hopefully that will tie in. So we hear in Isaiah, basically, forget the past. I'm going to do something new. So the first image that came to me when thinking about the past was driving while looking in the rearview mirror. And you'll probably go, oh, you've done this too. But have you ever been driving and looking too long in the rearview mirror and then had to hit the brakes pretty hard because you weren't paying attention to where you were going in the forward direction? Or maybe we spend a little bit of time looking back at life with that perfect 20/20 vision that this choice or that choice would have produced something different in our lives. I know that we tend to live our lives a lot by our memories, and why not? That's our experience. That gives us kind of an idea of what choice might be good to make. You learn quickly to do that again. So our memories can tell us what's reasonable, what's likely to happen, but maybe these memories, good and bad, can sometimes limit where the present might be and where the future might be going. So in this scripture, in Isaiah, I found myself grappling with the entire book of Isaiah. It was, is this one writer? Is it 2 writers? Is it 3 writers? I felt like there's 3 parts, and you're all going, no kidding. But like part 1, God is rather judgmental, and his children are not doing what he's commanded. So he's trying the punishment route. And we get in this that, things that you used to do for atonement, he doesn't want that anymore. So here becomes part two. God is now forgiving and redeeming. And then we have part three that's prophesying the coming of the Messiah. And then I thought maybe this entire book of Isaiah could be seen as a mirror of renewal, our theme, what we've been doing for these past weeks. So if you look at chapters 1 to 39, there's brokenness, there's warning, there's consequences of misplaced trust, and all the previous ways of atonement, the burning of incense and animal sacrifices. God's going, this is not working for me anymore. Then come chapters 40 to 55, and we get comfort and restoration and God doing something new. And then moving to chapters 56 to 66, it's kind of ongoing renewal and how God sees his people living into the future he creates. Our scripture is seen as a turning point in the book. The moment that God says, forget the past, I have something new in mind. The past doesn't get the final word. So imagine the Jewish people hearing this after experiencing God's displeasure and things he did to try to teach the people how to live according to his word. I think personally, if I was there, I would have expected probably a harsher punishment. But yet what actually happens? God redeems the people and he blots out their sins. These people, the Jewish people, they were defined by their past, and they remember things like the Exodus, the parting of the Red Sea, their freedom from slavery. The stories were and are central to their faith. And yet God says, don't remember these things. Don't remember former things. Do not consider things of old. God isn't saying, forget who you are, forget where you came from. He's telling us not to limit our present and our future by the past. Even holy memories can become a block if we can only perceive the way we think God used to work. The scripture passage, in addition to not considering these past things, says, I am about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Not someday, not eventually, now. And then this question I find kind of piercing. Do you not perceive it? I don't think the question is about eyesight. I think it's about awareness and attentiveness and whether we can work in ways that maybe aren't going to match our expectations. We will frequently pray to change our circumstances, but God maybe invites us to change our vision. We ask for new paths looking in all directions, and maybe God asks, can you see the path that's already forming right under your feet? God says, I'll make a way in the wilderness, and I will make a stream in the desert. He doesn't say the wilderness will disappear, and he doesn't say the desert's going to vanish. The hard places remain hard, but maybe not places of abandonment. Maybe they're places of transformation. This message will conclude our worship series on renewal. So I say, let's look for renewal in our perceptions. Renewal doesn't mean escape. Sometimes it means discovering that God is already present in places we thought were empty. The wilderness is a place of uncertainty, and the desert is a place of scarcity. And yet they're the places that God is promising new life. It's challenging, When you're standing lost in a wilderness, all you see is the wilderness. And when you're thirsty in a dry place, it's hard to imagine a stream of water showing up. But God asks, do you not perceive it? Perception requires trust. It requires letting go of the assumption that because something has been dry for a long time, that it will always be dry. It requires releasing belief that because a door once closed, it can never open again. I think this is true for us as individuals. How often have we said, this is just the way I am? This relationship will never change. We've always done it this way. This grief will never end. My struggle is permanent. But God says, I am doing a new thing. That new thing might not look like the old things we remember or the old miracles we've been told about. Maybe it'll be quieter, slower, more subtle. Maybe it does begin as a small stream showing up instead of the sea parting. Coming down hard. The danger isn't that God isn't active. The danger may be we look for God only where he used to be. To renew requires humility and the willingness to admit that God's imagination is probably a lot larger than ours. And it requires hope, the courage to believe that the future is not locked by the past. It requires attentiveness, the discipline of watching for signs of grace, even in unlikely places. So today, the question God poses in Isaiah comes to us. Do you not perceive it? Do we perceive God at work in our lives, even when things feel uncertain? Do we perceive God moving in our community, even when change feels uncomfortable? Do we perceive the quiet beginnings of renewal, even if they don't look like abundance? I think about my own life experiences. I had 3 passions as quite a young girl. One, my faith, passion, a personal relationship with God, talking to him all the time like he was right there. Music and teaching, my 3 passions. I walked the musical path steadfastly and maybe rather two-dimensionally in a non-physical way. So I'm walking this path of music and I find myself stumbling into the world of opera and on stages singing soprano operatic roles. Then I find myself still on that stage, but with my back to the audience, conducting choirs, teaching. I find myself teaching and working at this juncture mostly with youth. And in just following and sometimes stumbling and sometimes backing up and sometimes tripping and falling physically a lot. All these paths seem to be joining in my life to use all of it to glorify God. When I was singing opera, I did have the opportunity to observe a lot of my fellow singers getting stuck on a path of what was supposed to be, what should be happening, and what would still happen if they kept pounding that pavement. And for some reason, this hit me hard, and I got a strong message: stay open. And I can think now, as I get older, of how God was always leading me to different places and different going, really? But I thank God for leading me to trust him to guide my way, and to you as my church family to know that not the least of what has been happening has been happening right here at MUMC. So where might life lead, and what might we do together as a community if we release the should-haves and stop measuring today's blessings with yesterday's yardstick? What if we adjust our focus and not look for God in the loud and miraculous, but in the quiet and steady? Thinking of a magnificent, huge tree that doesn't just appear. It starts as a tiny green sprout with tiny little roots. We need to look for those small sprouts of growth and change. What if we expect the unexpected? God's new thing is not going to look like our old things. What if we're open to a different path, a different rhythm, and a different way of serving? And what if we totally trust the Waymaker? If we can't see the road ahead, it's because God is the one that's paving it. We don't need to see the final destination. We just need to trust the one who is the way. God promises a way where there is no way. God promises life where we may have just expected survival. God promises renewal, not by erasing our past, but by leading us beyond it. May we be a community not trapped by what was, but awakened to what. And may God give us the eyes to perceive it.